Hi, I'm Amanda Johnson. I'm the Executive Director of the ASXL Rare Research Endowment Foundation, or ARRE Foundation. We're here today to share the findings from the ARRE Foundation's 2024 PCORI Award and share how we've used this project to help support a community-driven approach to understand research priorities in ASXL-related disorders. And here to help share what we've learned over the last year is our collaborator in this project, Dr. Ludwig, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Natasha Ludwig, and I'm a neuropsychologist at Kennedy Krieger Institute and an assistant professor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences at the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine in Baltimore, Maryland. And most importantly, I am the older sister to a 34-year-old with ASXL3 related disorder. So, very, very happy to be here today.
Thanks. So before we start, this is just a quick slide to explain that what we're sharing today was funded through an award to the ARRE Foundation from the Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute, or PCORI, and what we're sharing today does not necessarily represent the views of PCORI. So one of the biggest challenges that we have in ASXL-related disorders is we have three different disorders with both distinct and shared symptoms. And we know that there are many challenges and many unknowns in the ASXL-related disorders. We also know that there's limited funding to try to study each of these things and help make sure that we're bringing standards of care to the community. So one of the biggest questions is where do we start in all of this? And how do we figure out what we prioritize? So through this project, the goal was to talk to families and figure out what are the top priorities, and then within that larger list, how do we then figure out what rises to the top? And so we started this work by asking families. Back in 2022, the ARRE Foundation did a survey with families that we called our Research Priority Survey. We had 205 responses across the three ASXL-related disorders, and you can see here the pie chart that shows the representation across the three disorders in terms of who responded. And so through that survey, we learned that neurodevelopment, which is inclusive of the concepts of cognition and communication, GI-related symptoms, gastrointestinal-related symptoms like constipation and feeding-related challenges, as well as behavioral concerns, were the top priorities when you took all three disorders together and looked at symptoms and priorities across different ages, different years of diagnosis, all these different factors. If you put everybody together, these were the top three symptoms that rose to the top as the highest priority. So we do have some additional information about this survey that goes into a little bit more in depth on the ARRE Foundation website. We'll provide a link to that. You're welcome to take a look at that. And we also have a survey or a publication forthcoming that will explain this a little bit more in depth that will help make this information even more broadly available to the medical and research community as well. But the real takeaway from this slide is that this work was really the foundational component to beginning to work towards this project that we're talking about here today to figure out within these three areas that the family community provided as their top concerns. What do we mean when we say neurodevelopment? What do we mean when we say GI-related symptoms? And how can we develop research questions, which are what researchers seek to answer through the research studies and experiments that they conduct? How do we take these sort of high-level concepts and break them into research questions and then from there prioritize them so we truly have a community-driven prioritized list of research questions related to these three concepts that has wide input and support across the ASXL family community. So Dr. Ludwig is now going to explain a little bit more about how we use this work as the basis for the PCORI Engagement Award that helped us define and prioritize these research questions.
Yeah, so as Amanda mentioned, we were successful in obtaining a PCORI award. And this was led by both Amanda and I, and with our colleagues at Kennedy Krieger Institute, as well as other academic partners at Boston Children's Hospital and UCLA. So the primary goals for the project were one, we wanted to build community engagement in the research process. And so we really wanted families, clinicians, scientists to all understand the importance and value of the family voice in research. Additionally, we wanted to work together to generate and prioritize research questions in those three priority areas through focus groups at the 2024 Family Conference, as well as an online survey. And so, again, those three areas were neurodevelopment, gastrointestinal related symptoms, and behavioral concerns. All right, so this visual is essentially a schematic that shows the project process, which we will talk about briefly in the subsequent slides. So the project was led by Amanda and I, and we also had a research team, which included myself as the expert in neurodevelopment, as well as Calliope Holing, who's an expert in GI, and Julia O'Connor, who's an expert in behavior. And both of those people are my colleagues at Kennedy Krieger. We also had the topic group team. And so both Amanda and I, as well as the other two research team members, were also included in the topic group team. But the topic group team was broader. It was a multi-stakeholder steering committee that included parent caregivers of individuals with ASXL-related disorders, clinical geneticists and scientists, a PCORI expert, as well as I mentioned, the research experts. And so, really, the topic group team, their focus was really to plan and implement the study, which included focus groups, which included a much broader range of caregiver input. We had 40 participants who actually came and participated in our focus groups last summer at the conference. And then after the conference, after the focus groups, we aggregated those findings and turned them into a research prioritization survey, which was open to anyone with a connection to the ASXL community. So parents and other caregivers, researchers, doctors, therapists, teachers, industry, you name it. Anyone could with some connection to the ASXL community could participate. And so the next slide here, again, it just kind of reiterates that this was a really community-driven design. The core project team included parents, doctors, clinicians, scientists, right? And during our meetings, we met throughout the year. This project took place during the whole year of 2024, even though the focus groups and it happened in the summer. It was, a lot of planning from the spring 2024 all the way through the end of the year and beyond. And during our core project meetings, we had caregivers share lived experiences so that the rest of the team could gain a little bit of insight of what daily life looks like in caring for an individual with an ASXL related disorder. And in those meetings, we also engaged in a lot of planning and planning for the project and, of course, implementation and then kind of analysis of our findings. So we conducted those focus groups in the summer of 2024 at our family conference. And then we did a research question prioritization survey, which happened actually in March of 2025. And this was really, again, broadly distributed. And the purpose of this was to take what we learned from the focus groups and then create some research questions. So our topic group team worked together to create research questions based on what we learned about those three priority areas. And our ask for those who took the survey was to essentially rank, those research questions in order of priority within those three domains of neurodevelopment, GI, and behavior. So here are just some brief results from our focus groups. So we had 45 families attend the conference, including 13 topic group team members. We had 40 participants in the focus groups themselves in 15 sessions. So we had 15 focus groups over 2 days. And we solicited some feedback about research participation during the conference. And so we had 21 families fill that out, and we got really strong positive feedback about the focus groups. So, and 44% said that the focus group should be repeated at a future conference. This is a really positive experience for most people, which we love to hear. And so here are just some brief results from the focus groups. So again, we had separate focus groups for neurodevelopment, gastrointestinal, and behavioral symptoms, right? And so for neurodevelopment, just some themes that I wanted to highlight. There were many more, but these are just some that I want to highlight. So kind of that atypical trajectory of neurodevelopment in individuals with ASXL-related disorders. Emotional and behavioral regulation and mental health was of concern. And this notion that, the current ways in which we assess or measure neurodevelopment are inadequate for this population. For GI, some themes that popped up were, different approaches to management of these symptoms, various discussion of various different interventions and supports and utility, or the pros and cons of those treatments, and then also um, this ability or theme around, recognizing families and caregivers recognizing GI symptoms and the ability of individuals with ASXL to effectively communicate their GI symptoms as a barrier. And then and then also feeding and mealtime challenges, as well as differential kind of experiences with the healthcare system in regard to seeking assessment and intervention for GI symptoms. In the behavior domain, some themes that came up included manifestation of problem behavior, so they look differently across different individuals. And then assessment and treatment of problem behavior. So, different approaches to assessment and treatment, and, what worked, what hasn't worked. And then also the impact of behavior on the family was a big theme that popped up as well. So we learned a whole lot during these focus groups. And like I said, that's just a few select themes, but there were many more that we learned, and it's going to fuel research moving forward. Okay, and then as I mentioned earlier, after the focus groups, the topic group team met and processed, everything that we learned, and we came up with some research questions that we thought were important from what families shared with us. And the purpose of the survey was to essentially have the community rank those research questions. So we know as an organization what are the most important aspects of these different symptom domains to research. And so our team developed research questions. We came up with 8 for neurodevelopment, 10 for GI symptoms, and 11 for behavior symptoms. And then we sent out that survey. We developed it here at Kennedy Krieger, and then the ARRE Foundation did an amazing job with creating advertisements and sending it out to the community. And we asked the community to rank those research questions in order of priority. And the survey was open from February 24th to March 31st to 2025. And amazingly, thank you all, we got 345 responses and 168 were complete, which is an amazing data set. So thank you all to those who participated. So we've started analyzing the data and wanted to share some of the initial findings. We came up with some top research questions in neurodevelopment, gastrointestinal, and behavior as ranked by survey participants. I'm not going to read each one of these, but you can find this information on the website. So I will say we wanted to report on the top 3 research questions, but there were some ties. And so for neurodevelopment, there was a tie for 4th place, and same with behavior.
So now that we have these prioritized research questions, what do we do with this information? So this slide will talk a little bit more about some of our ongoing work and what we can do with this, and some sort of general reflections on the project as well. So one of the goals through this award as an engagement award was to help build relationships with new clinical research partners, which we were successful in doing. We also helped increase the engagement of some of our parent topic group team members. So we had members of that topic group team that helped guide the project go on to become members of the ARRE Foundation's board of directors, join committees, and host some online facilitation groups for the ARRE Foundation going forward. The ARRE Foundation also developed some new programming inspired by the focus groups and how much families appreciated that opportunity to talk in small groups around common themes. That's included things like the ASXL Dad Chat that we now host monthly, a single parents and caregivers meetup, and then some other sort of thematic online virtual programming that we've launched since this project has concluded. The ARRE Foundation has also been able to successfully secure additional PCORI funding to continue continue to build on this work. And this new project that we started a couple of months ago also includes partnership with Dr. Ludwig and Dr. Bianca Russell at UCLA to continue to build capacity towards future patient-centered comparative clinical effectiveness research in ASXL-related disorders. So where do we sort of go from here? So while we know that there's so much that's still unknown in ASXL-related disorders, we have more tools now to help us prioritize what's important and know that members of the family community and other members of the ASXL community have been able to have a really robust opportunity to help inform what those top priorities are and then help go even further in terms of ranking them in terms of priority. So it gives us some great data to be able to help build a strategy that's centered around family-centered prioritization. And so these results can help guide things like our foundation programs and educational materials. If we know where the biggest gaps are, we can help fill some of those through some of our educational programming and other materials. It helps the ARRE Foundation with our research funding priorities. We know we can't fund absolutely everything, but this helps us hone in on what should be considered as a top priority for our limited funding dollars. And it helps inform future clinical research studies. So things like the natural history study and some of the phenotyping work that Dr. Ludwig is involved in, and the natural history study as well that's at UCLA. So a concrete example of that is, if we're going to ask families to complete a questionnaires that are centered on some of the things that have risen to the top as priorities through this project is a great example of that. So in conclusion, we want to thank everybody in the ASXL community who's been a part of this project over the last year, especially ASXL families. Extend our thanks to PCORI for funding this project and then continuing their support of our work with our new project that started in early June. Thank you to our topic group team members, especially the 6 parents who are a part of that group and lent their invaluable expertise to that project. And then Dr. Ludwig's collaborators at Kennedy Krieger Institute, including Calliope Huling, Julia O'Connor, and then the research staff who's pictured here, Rachel Northrup, Janaea Franklin, and Isabella Capps. These are the folks behind the scenes that help keep moving everything forward. So thanks for listening. This has been a really exciting project, and we've learned a lot and appreciate everybody's participation.
Thank you all.